Devourin seems like a normal planet. The friendly locals welcome Tash, Zack, and their Uncle Hool with open arms. But Tash has a bad feeling about this place. There's a madman running around the streets shouting that people are disappearing. He's saying they've just vanished into thin air. Tash knows that's impossible, but something is really wrong on Devourin. Will she find the courage to trust her gut and stop the instincts before it's too late?
Hello, younglings, and welcome to the Padawan Library. I'm Levi Paratic. With me, as always, is Tim May.
Hey!
How are you? And, younglings, this month, this is a very important month because this is our Galaxy of Fear month.
See, it's October. Yeah, that is the bit that we're doing. It's October, and we have to do a theme month in October, like literally every podcast. And specifically, a horror theme month because we have books that we can cover for this Galaxy of Fear books. We'll talk all about those. But we're going to have guests on, I think, every episode this month.
I think so. Hopefully.
So we're going to talk about that after we record. We'll work all that scheduling out. And we definitely have a guest for this episode. He's been briefly appeared on the show. He refereed our
Jedi draft.
Our Jedi draft. And you remember the Jedi team draft? You were a big part of it.
I don't remember.
You were on
You did the coin flip.
Oh, well. Please welcome a good friend of ours for a very long time, Brook White. How you doing, Brook?
I'm doing good. You could refer to me as the Goose Bumper.
Already talking about why we have him on here.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah, Goosebumps is a series of books that Brooke, I believe you have the complete collection of.
Oh yeah. I've got the whole collection of that, and been watching spooky stuff since the dawn of my existence. So yeah.
Yeah. So this is a spooky month. We're talking about the spookiest Star Wars books there are. Right? The spookiest ones. And so
the only thing that I think could be as spooky as this is what Death Troopers, that zombie stormtrooper movie.
Red Harvest, of course. Harvest. But regardless, we'll talk about all that when we get into the book. But before, and we're going to talk a little Star Wars news in a bit too, guys, because I know there's some big news that's happened the last week or two that we haven't talked about on the podcast. So we'll get to all that. But first, Brooke, now, of all the guests we've had on the show, you're an interesting one. You're a pretty casual Star Wars fan. Is that correct?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I would say. Yes.
Do you remember watching Star Wars for the first time?
Yeah, it was on VHS. I remember I saw them a little before. I want to say around the time like Shadow of the Empire on the N64 came out.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know what caught me. My mom, because my parents owned a video store. My dad hates Star Wars. Like absolutely hates it. It's been on TV. We've watched like little bits of it over the years, and he flips it to something else.
He is my apes brother, though. Correct? He loves Planet of the Apes.
Yeah, I'm from an apes family. That's by apes family I mean me and my dad, because I don't think anyone else in my family even cares about that. But that's my basis there. So I watched the original trilogy on VHS. I don't know. I don't know if it was the theatrical one or if it was the first like real re-release where they started adding some stuff to it.
Special edition.
Yeah. But I remember watching them and I liked them. I'd seen them a few times, as a kid, and I didn't really get back into Star Wars until after Phantom Menace. I saw Phantom Menace on VHS at a birthday party, and then I saw Attack of the Clones on television. I didn't see either of those in theaters, just because, we didn't go to theaters very much. Parents owned a video store, so I don't know. Just wasn't my thing, but I don't know. At some time in middle school, I got pretty big into it for a minute. I love the original trilogy. Not a big Episode 1 guy per se, but I think episode I know. I think, or I'll say this. I think the movie looks really nice, and I think there's some really cool moments in that movie. I think Attack of the Clones is actually pretty fun. I like that one. I think the last third of that movie is really good, and I think there's some fun stuff throughout it. And Episode 3 I think is great, and then I'm kind of mixed on the Disney ones.
Yeah. So,
as you should be. So
relax. You're sounding more and more like a crazed person every day.
You know what? As more and more time goes on, I'm souring more and more on these Disney movies.
I'm in a similar position. I just don't want to. I don't like. I don't like the implications of some of the more strident criticisms of those movies. So I just try to be not positive about them, but just not hateful about them, if that makes sense.
To defend myself, even though I don't need to, I don't have a lot of the problems some people do with the new Disney movies. I just haven't. I don't know.
Nobody's attacking anyone. Obviously, yeah. We would never have someone on the show that's like, oh, well, I hate Rose because she's a woman or whatever. Yeah. I mean, if you hate Rose, it's already a weird. You hate her. Not caring about her is one thing. Hate her seems strange. Anyway, Brooke, you can stick around. We're going to talk about some Star Wars news. Actually, this rolls into this a little bit. Because right after we recorded, because we were like, "There's no news. We're not going to talk about this," and we talked about.
There's been nothing but news ever since we last recorded.
Yeah, last episode, we talked for 20 minutes about a TV show list that had nothing to do with Star Wars. And because we were like, oh, there's nothing to talk about. We're in a lull before the storm. And it was the calm before the storm because right after we recorded, I think it actually happened that night. It was announced that, or it was reported anyway, that Kevin Feige of Marvel Studios is producing one Star Wars movie that I think should be emphasized. Because a lot of the conspiracy theories about this are a little absurd. Because guess who's still on for the next fucking 3 years? Kathy Kennedy, and will probably get a renewal if she wants to stay on. Kathy Kennedy, get over it, little babies. Anyway, so
I actually didn't hear a whole lot about that story.
Well, that's the biggest news. We'll talk.
That's the big. Well. Oh, don't forget about the Obi-Wan news, though. Did you see?
The director news? Deborah Chow, she directed on Better Call Saul.
Better Call Saul. She's done a lot of TV.
She's done a couple Mandalorians.
Yep, she did. I think 2 Mandalorian. Actually, I could be wrong. It could be 3. I know she did more than 1.
And she's directing the entire Obi-Wan series. And it's written. The writer of Drive, is that right? Is the writer?
I didn't see that. Wow,
I believe so. I don't remember that.
That's
guy's
an Oscar
name.
Isaac film. That's a film featuring the Lord. So in a very small role.
Yeah, he's good in that. But. Lots of big news, but I do want to talk quick about the Feige thing because here's the thing. We have not made a secret about our opinions about the Marvel Cinematic Universe on this podcast. I think I'm higher on it probably than you are, in that I think there are some movies that are very good. I think.
Yeah,
but the thing is, I do not long for the Marvel style to invade any other franchise. To me, it is so singular in both good and bad ways, and mostly bad in terms of what I don't want to be a part of Star Wars. All the new Star Wars movies, no matter what you want to say about them, look better than every single Marvel movie ever made. Mm-hmm. They are aesthetically more pleasing.
I agree. I agree because there's so much in the CGI gets in the Marvel movies just gets lost and jumbled. Excuse me, there's a giant truck pulling in behind me right now.
Well, hopefully your mic's not picking it up.
Who
knows? This
Who knows?
podcast we make for free. Actually, once again, we pay to make this podcast. So if you have problems with truck behind Levi, then, you got problems with the show, that's fine. Stop listening. We don't make money. It doesn't matter how many people listen.
You get paid with smiles every week.
Yeah, come on, Tim. It's all smiles around
Whatever,
here.
it's fine. Guess what? I woke up at 1:30 or 2 in the morning or something, and it's now about 7 o'clock, and I knew that we were recording later than we normally do. We normally record around 4, and you know what? I'm really tired, and I'm a freak who wakes up too early. I get it. I've tried to change it my whole life. I've tried so many fucking times, and it just never worked. Apparently my body will never adjust to this. It's just done. I'm done. I'm dust. I am dust.
Tim May's constantly on them coal miner hours, even though he doesn't have to go to work till 7 in the morning.
I am mine dust.
That is from now on, whatever I'm going to refer to you as a coal miner. Your coal miner hours.
I've been saying that for years.
That's ridiculous.
I can't believe I've never heard that before. That
Anyway.
is the perfect summation of Tim's sleeping hours.
Brooke, though, you're more of a... You and I bonded over our love of comic books, so we've talked a lot about the Marvel movies. How do you feel about the idea of Kevin Feige making or producing, because he's not a writer or director, but producing a Star Wars movie?
I'm pretty. I don't think it's a good idea. I haven't really liked. I mean, I've liked a lot. I feel like me and Tim have pretty similar opinions on the MCU ones. Some of them I think are really good, but a lot of those I don't think have to do with Kevin Feige. At least I don't know. I mean, they do to extent.
The best ones, I don't know if they do.
I mean, the planning and the event part, that's him, I guess. Setting him and his team setting stuff up. But in terms of that, I'm kind of sick of it. I'm sick of it. I just like the ones that they don't deal with that crap. Like, I think Black Panther's really good.
That's like a great movie. It's just by itself. You don't have to watch any other bullshit.
But I've been pretty disappointed with how my boy Spider-Man's been treated so far. With MCU. Even though
we've gotten into this in the past on the podcast.
He's back, though, people.
Listen. That's the other big news that dropped right after the podcast ended. Not that it matters for this show, but that everybody rejoice. We're going to get more Marvel Spider-Man. Boo to that, I say.
I mean, I think these Spider-Man movies from the MCU have been better than the two Amazing ones.
Oh, who doesn't?
But I mean, I expect better.
Yeah, that's the lowest possible bar.
Homecoming is a safe, just average movie. Far From Home is better.
It is better.
I think it's as good as that's going to get. But they spoiler alert for anyone listening. I don't like the. I'm not going to say what happens, but I don't like the post-credit scene. I like half of it because my boy is in it. But
my boy. Have you seen that movie? Okay.
But
That's
I'm
annoying.
super happy he was there, but not happy about the implications.
Yeah, there's other elements of the ending that are annoying. Regardless, this is what I'll say about Kevin Feige. Currently, the deal with Star Wars is that he's making one movie. And so if that's it, and he's producing one movie, he is a good producer. He's made good movies. Like, he is the real producer of the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies. Avi Arad is, was also a producer, but, he's a maniac. But anyway... he produced a lot. He has produced good individual movies. Iron Man is a very good movie that he produced, that is not, really that tied into any universe bullshit, So, if he wants to produce one movie that isn't about setting up the next 5 years of movies for Star Wars, then I'm totally down with him being involved. I think he's a very talented guy. But if it's about, now he's going to take over this super storytelling structure... That is not where I want Star Wars to go.
Oh, well, I'm
going to call it now. I'm calling it now. He's doing Boba Fett.
Oh, well, they've been trying to make that forever.
They have been trying to make that forever, and I feel like they would trust him to do it if they treated him like a comic book character, in a way. So who knows? That's what I'm calling it.
I can tell you you're wrong. Because, Because Kevin's got a big plan. It's going to take place after Episode 9. The world building's already done. It's going to be a big crossover event. between the MCU and Star Wars.
Oh, Lord.
They're gonna bring Robert back. They're gonna have the whole crew. They're gonna be like, we're gonna fly right past Galactus and right into the Star Wars universe.
I can see it like now. Somehow like episode 9 will end like with this like joyous conclusion, and then like the Guardians of the Galaxy will like crash land or something, and it'll be just like, no! I've never considered like tearing apart like theater seats and like literally tearing apart a theater, but if somehow the Guardians of the Galaxy showed up at the end of the like episode 9, I would riot.
No, don't worry, they won't appear at the end, but there's gonna be a post-credit scene, and that's where you're gonna get it, and you're gonna see Star Wars.
If there's ever a post-credit scene in a Star Wars movie, I will throw up.
Yeah, same.
Of any kind. I'm not talking about that it indicates a Marvel crossover, this nonsense. I mean, any kind of post-credit scene, I will throw up in my seat. Throw up. Post-credit scenes are not... They're bullshit.
Get ready, baby. You're going to see Blade with a lightsaber.
I watched Black Panther again 2 weeks ago. Great movie. The scene in the mid-credits could easily have just been the last fucking scene of the movie. The scene where he's at the UN or whatever. Like, why wasn't that just the end of the movie? Why did there have to be credits and then that scene? That's stupid. And then there's the dumb scene with Bucky at the end that has nothing to fucking do with the movie. That's just about Infinity War and actually doesn't matter at all, even to Infinity War. Go fuck yourself with that shit. Post-credit scenes are bad. Anyway, this is Galaxy of Fear Month, guys.
Get scared. Be scared.
Yeah,
Tim's angry. Tim might turn green.
Oh, yeah. But my secret is I'm always angry. I like the MCU. Anyway, so, when we come back, we're going to talk about Galaxy of Fear number 1, Eaten Alive, written by one John Whitman. Am I right about that?
Yeah, that's the correct. Yep.
All right, cool.
We'll talk more about him and the illustrator after. All right,
John Whitman, interesting guy. We'll talk.
Very, very interesting guy.
We'll talk in a bit. Welcome back to Padawan Library. I'm Tim May here, as always, with Levi Peretic, and our very special guest this week, Brook White.
Hi.
Hey.
Dark greetings.
Oh, well, that's not this series.
I feel like it can apply. Dark greetings and dark blessings. It's dark.
We'll talk a lot about this, actually. That is a worthwhile thing to bring up. But let's start here. Brooke, we mentioned that you love Goosebumps.
Yeah.
Goosebumps is specifically in the exact age range of like the books we cover on this podcast.
Yeah.
The books we're going to cover this month are Galaxy of Fear, which quite clearly, was marketed as essentially Star Wars Goosebumps.
Yep.
Would you agree with that?
I'd say marketed-wise, sure.
Yeah. So, so that's part of why we wanted you on for this. We planned this literally like 6 months ago. I was like, hey, you want to come on when we do this Galaxy of Fear book? And you're like, yeah, sure.
Brooke, let me ask you a question. Have you read a Star Wars book before today? Is this your first Star Wars book?
I'm a virgin on this voyage. This is the first one. Only expanded universe stuff I've ever touched is the video games.
Yeah.
Which is just Rogue Squadron games and Shadow of the Empire. I haven't even played anything. Oh, and Knights of the Republic.
Right.
I think that's it for me, though.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, but this series, though, let's just do some basic establishment of kind of where it's set. It's set 6 months after A New Hope, so this is actually an era we've never covered on this podcast.
Right, and we get to talk about some characters we've never covered on this podcast, too, which is a lot of fun.
We kind of have covered them.
Well, Vader shows up at the beginning of the book.
Well, yes, of course. By the way, did you write notes for the prologue or epilogue?
I was just going to read the prologue, and because I wrote
notes for the prologue.
Okay.
The epilogue, I just said read the whole thing, because I wasn't sure if I was supposed to cover it or not.
Well, then I'll just read the prologue, because I figured that would be my chapter, since that's not chapter 1.
All right, well, whatever.
So,
whatever.
all right.
Whatever.
All right, let's talk about John Whitman, the author of this book.
He wrote all 12 of these books, correct?
Correct.
So there's something. Go to his Wikipedia page.
Yeah, I was actually going to just read this, all right?
Okay.
John Whitman is an American novelist and martial arts instructor. He is a 5th degree black belt and defensive tactics instructor in Krav Maga. I have never heard of that before.
I think it's Krav Maga.
Okay, that could be. His T-shirt says that in his Wikipedia photo. He has trained in protective services and defensive tactics in both the United States and Israel. Whitman teaches civilian, military, and law enforcement personnel and has served as an instructor for elite military units in the United States and abroad. He is the founder of the Krav Maga Alliance and International Organization of Krav Maga Schools, and has served as president of Krav Maga worldwide for 7 years. He attended Berkeley from 85 to 89. He has a BA in literature, attended Boston University from 90 to 91. He's got an MA in creative writing, and he was an executive editor at Time Warner Audiobooks. So on top of this, Galaxy of Fear, he's written 4 novels based on 24, the Fox series 24. And
that sounds more like what he would write.
Right, that sounds right up his alley. I'm surprised he hasn't done more military kind of related things.
He did the novelization of 13 Hours, The Secret Soldiers of Benghazi.
And then
he's that kind of guy?
He seems like that kind of guy. He's also, before this, because it says in his About the Author, he did something about interactive Carmen Sandiego books of some sort. I'm not sure what that's about, but Carmen Sandiego, an IP that should probably get a reboot here pretty soon.
They already did. They did. It's on Netflix.
Oh, that's right. You're totally right about that.
I think it has the lady from Jane the Virgin or whatever it is.
Yeah. Gina Rodriguez.
Yes.
Okay. All right. She's Carmen Sandiego.
She's a lady.
She's a lady, but weird way to say it for me.
I remember I was big into this TV show called, it was like a game show, but it was like this futuristic game show, and it had this theme song, because Carmen Sandiego was traveling through time, taking artifacts. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, you're talking about where in the world is Carmen Sandiego? Something like
where in time?
Yeah.
It was we gotta solve this mystery.
Yeah.
Was it always time themed?
I thought it was just
so.
travel themed.
Yeah, I thought it was just travel themed.
There was a
Was there a
space
time
agey theme.
spin-off or something?
Okay, I'm gonna look this up now. So,
Okay, well, let's just talk, Brooke. How you doing?
I'm doing fine. Doing fine.
But, he's looking up some nonsense. This is what we do.
See, you guys are already setting up a spin-off. You got a Carmen Sandiego spin-off in the works right now.
Yeah. Listen, we're the greatest development executives in the game.
The possibilities are endless. You guys are the Kevin Feige of podcasts.
Oh, yeah. Or look out, Earwolf. Look out. The Ringer. I don't know, I'm just thinking of podcast networks. We're taking them down.
Tim May presents.
All right, this is taking forever. Hold up.
Okay, well, listen. We should probably get into this. You want to talk about the illustrator a little bit?
Oh, yeah.
Let's talk about the covers of these books. They're actually interesting.
So a handful of these books have these lenticular covers where if you turn them, they
holofoil covers.
We
all lived in the 90s. We know what it is.
And they call them limited edition, limited collector's editions.
They're way more common. They are so much more common.
They are way more common than the
because there are regular painted covers.
Right, for all the books.
Yeah.
For all of them. And the painted one for this cover is way better than this thing here. In fact, all the painted covers are way better than all of these lenticular covers. But I'm going to point out that these were done by Stephen Chorney. And Stephen Chorney has actually done quite a lot. He did the Labyrinth poster. That's one of his big things. He did a lot of stuff for Buena Vista. He did a lot of stuff for Lucasfilm even later on in terms of just TVs. He did 50 TV guide covers is one of his big things.
What a legend. I love those old drawn TV guide covers.
You probably did a lot of them. I
love that stuff.
He did Dynasty, Miami Vice,
Oh.
T.J. Hooker.
Did you mention Vice in my presence?
I did mention Vice in your presence. So
that's right, Miami Vice, baby.
Oh no, Michael Mann.
He also did. He also did preliminary posters for Who Framed Roger Rabbit, License to Kill, Last Crusade. He's currently working with Disney Parks, California Tourism, and Universal Parks and Resorts for doing artwork for them.
Or something?
Yeah, probably. What's interesting is he got his start. His big break was he did the movie poster for a movie called Lasseter. And Lasseter, not about John Lasseter, but it was a Tom Selleck, Jane Seymour movie from around the time Magnum PI was a big deal. So that was his big break into the movie poster gig. So, but yeah, he did. Yeah, he's done a lot of. If you just go to his website, he's got this crazy like Adobe Flash website that like it jumps all around. But yeah, he's done quite a bit of stuff that's like, and he's really good too, so that's give him some props, since so many of his covers were replaced by these limited collector's editions which were mass produced.
Now if you want to see some limited collector's editions for our podcast, check out our Instagram. It should be up by now. There's several wonderful limited lenticular special edition covers that are themed to Padawan Library on our Instagram for this month. So
yeah, you made those. Those are a lot of fun.
Check them out.
Yeah, how'd you do the effect on them to make them look so like they were I don't want to say lenticular, but looked like they were scanned.
So I went. I found like some like website where you can layer two images, because I don't have Photoshop. So. So I got a bunch of like high res like tie-dye glass images, and then I took the pictures that I used, and I made the main image the glass, and then I took the image, and I took the under image was going to be like the picture of one of us or both of us. And I made the opacity on the glass thing it varied depending on the tones of the image or whatever. But I fucked around with the opacity until it looked good, and I downloaded the pictures. Well,
it was a lot of fun. I want to point out one of the photos is of the two of us with a birthday cake, and we were celebrating Oscar Isaac's birthday.
Yes.
We took that photo for his 37th birthday. I want to say
back when we on our old podcast, Missing Reels.
And that's when we recorded a Sucker Punch episode. We did a review of the terrible Snyder flick Sucker Punch. And Brooke, were you there for that? I remember somebody was there for that. Somebody had to sit through Sucker Punch with us.
My brother, I think.
Okay.
And he had seen it in the theater, so he was very mad at us.
Nice try. I wouldn't sit through that.
Yeah, and listen, that movie is very bad. You will never be able to find that podcast, unfortunately. It just doesn't exist. I don't have it, and it's not online anymore, so it is what it is. But that's the last image of it. There's actually two pictures of us recording our old podcast I used, because there's
you're right, the other one.
So, that's fun. But and then the other two are just solo pictures of the two of us. So, have a fun time with that. But anyway...
Let's get into this.
Let's get into the book. So...
All right.
This book begins with a prologue.
Yes, I do want to point out, too, the author has a dedication here, but it's on the page with the publication stuff. It's right at the top of it. So a lot of people probably missed that. It's for my wife Lisa, who always rescues me. She must be trained. She must be a 6th degree black belt to be able to save him.
So anyway, this
the prologue.
Yeah, you wanted to read the whole prologue?
Yeah, it's just a page and a half.
I wrote a whole paragraph describing this prologue. So that's
then why don't you? Do you just do it then?
Okay,
your paragraph will take less time.
Okay. Listen, there's a scientist, okay, and he's doing some sort of creature experimentation on a table. All right? And while he's doing this, Vader shows up. Darth Vader shows up to supervise. We have never read a book that featured Darth Vader. Really.
Nope.
Right?
Well, I mean, Anakin, but
but, you know. And the scientist talks to Vader, and he claims that this creature is going to be the greatest power in the galaxy. And then Vader reminds him, no, that's the Force, my dude. And so he also reminds him that the Death Star was also once claimed to be the greatest power in the galaxy, and look what happened to that. And it's been about 6 months since that happened. And Vader believes that the project that this scientist is working on may have already been discovered, and the scientist kind of shrugs it off, and Vader leaves, and the scientist looks at Vader, and he dreams of taking him down and taking his rightful place by the Emperor's side. We'll never see these two guys again the rest of this book. I just want to point that out.
Yeah, this does not come back in. This is not about this book. What's going on?
This is clearly set up for later. I see Vader on the cover of one of the later books. But this is actually a pretty good Vader scene. I want to say that.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. I agree. And also, there's something he said here about only two other beings in the galaxy had access to this hidden fortress. So I'm assuming that's Vader and the Emperor. Vader's a lot of fun here. Something I want to talk about, and this is completely unrelated to this. I feel like there is a big divide in terms of like Anakin and Vader. Like a lot of the times they feel like two separate characters despite being the same person. And I was going to bring up to you if maybe whenever we talk about Vader, we refer to him as Anakin, and we try to break that divide between the characters. we're trying to build the bridge because they are one, but they feel like so separate sometimes. So.
Okay. How do you feel about that, Brooke?
The what? They calling him Anakin or the opening prologue?
Well, either.
It seemed very Star Wars to me for the opening, and then sure we can call him Anakin the rest of this time. I'm here for that's all good.
Okay,
we won't mention him again. So.
I mean, we'll table the Anakin discussion.
Anakin. I mean, it's your show. You two can do whatever you please.
Listen, I think you're saying you don't fuck with Obi-Wan's explanation that he is the same guy as Anakin and Darth Vader. So, like, when Obi-Wan says in Jedi that, he ceased to be Anakin Skywalker, you don't believe that. I mean, obviously you don't believe that because Luke doesn't believe that.
Well, I mean, he becomes Anakin again.
Yes, so I'm okay with calling it interchangeably. You know what, we should, when we do Jedi Quest, if we want to break down the barriers, really, when we're doing Jedi Quest and we're talking about little boy Anakin, we should be calling him Vader.
We should.
And Darth Vader did this. And Darth Vader did that.
We should do that. We should 100% do that.
I'm okay with that.
Under that armor is a small boy in a lot of pain, and he's made some decisions that he can't turn back on, and he has to deal with those decisions, and that causes him great strife.
All right, well, let's get back to this, and I want to say this because this is going to be a theme running through the conversation, and Brooke, I think, is going to have a lot to say about this, is that we mentioned that these books are clearly marketed towards kind of the Goosebumps crowd.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll say this just up front. I like this book. However, I would not call it horror fiction. Would you call it that, Brooke?
No.
It's very much just kind of a Star Wars adventure book. Would you agree with that, Levi?
I agree with that, and I would actually put this in line with, like, encroaching on Jude level. Like, I'm not saying it's as good as Jude, but, like, this is probably the first novel that we've read that I'm like, okay, this is up there in terms of her quality. Do you agree with that?
I agree. I think it's a very solid Star Wars adventure, and we'll talk about the characters that are introduced very soon here. But I like the characters, and we'll talk in a more general terms, but you felt hoodwinked by this book. You felt bamboozled by this book. Led astray.
Yes.
etc., the Malcolm X quote. But, like, would you agree with that, Brooke? That you felt
That it lived up to Jude? I haven't read a Jude
well,
book.
no, not that. Would you agree with the... You did feel like this book kind of was falsely advertised to you.
Yeah, I think it was. I mean, at times I felt like, every time it was going... See, here's the thing. It definitely takes ideas from Goosebumps, like the way the chapters ends, where like something scary is supposed to happen, and then you find out what it is, in the next like sentence. There's that. So it does borrow the tactics of Goosebumps, I think, and in that sense. But it's more. I mean, it's just really more of a Star Wars mystery more than anything.
Sure.
There's a few spooky-ish kind of moments, but it's
right. And we'll get into all of it, but I just want to put that out there right up the top, just because if you sense any sense of disappointment on the level of Brooke, it's on Brooke's. In Brooke's voice, it's not that like you think it's a terrible book. It's just that it's not like a.
If you love Star Wars and you're that age, I think you'd probably still have a good time. But if my mom picked that up for me as a kid, thinking I was going to be spooked, I'd be pretty disappointed as a kid. Actually,
yeah,
I think
you'd be like, this is no Fear Street.
I would throw it down on the ground and go, this got nothing on my boy Stein.
This is no, fuck. Oh, I can't think of fucking Goosebumps titles. God damn it.
There's many, my man.
I know.
The Haunted Mask.
Haunted Mask Part 2.
The Abominable Snowman.
Yeah.
The Living Dummy. Yeah. I've never even read a Goosebumps book in my life.
Whoa!
That I can name.
This is a great revelation.
Man, that's messed up. I thought you were my friend.
Oh, yeah.
What the heck? Who grew up in the 90s and not even read one Goosebumps book?
You're a freak.
I wasn't into spooky things.
You're
I was just into Star Wars and Batman. That was me. I actually read one of these Galaxy of Fear books.
I'd say Batman's spookier, probably the most Goosebumps.
I should point out that I read these books when I was a kid. I didn't read all of them, but I read a few of them. I read the first couple and probably a couple scattered ones.
I read the ones that had Darth Vader battling Darth Vader on the cover, and the one with Boba Fett on the cover. Those were the two that I was like, yeah, these ones.
All right,
I don't care about continuity.
We need to move on. We need to get to the book, the actual meat of the book. Let me speed through chapter 1 here. So we begin with what seems kind of like a dogfight between an X-Wing and a TIE fighter. And there seems to be kind of a familiarity between the pilots. The X-Wing's a boy, and the TIE fighter pilot's a girl, and they seem like kids the way they talk, they interact with each other. But just as the X-Wing's kind of gaining the upper hand in the battle, the ships flicker away, and the battle is revealed to be simply some sort of holo game played by brother and sister, Zack and Tosh, Aranda. These are our main characters. Okay, and really Tosh and Zack. Zack is kind of the secondary lead. They're two orphans from Alderaan, and they've been off. They were off world when the Empire blew Alderaan up, and their parents, family, friends, all of them are dead. And now we're 6 months later, and they've been taken in by their quote unquote uncle Hool, and Hool is a Shido, which is a shape-shifting alien race whose brother had married their aunt, so he's a pretty distant relative, but apparently Shido, they believe deeply in family, even extended family, and so he took them in, but he's kind of a grumpy guy. And they also have a caretaker droid named DV9, who resents his assignment. He's pissed off about it, but he does it anyway. And so DV is giving them a lesson about some sort of extinct species, and it makes Tosh think about how she discovered the existence of the Jedi Knights on the HoloNet, which we haven't talked about the HoloNet, back on Alderaan several months ago, and she had read a post that was made by someone called Force Flow, all one word. That's their online,
tag,
their online handle, their AIM username, and so she tried to reach out to Force Flow, and they never responded, and then the post was removed from the HoloNet, and she couldn't find any info on the Jedi except the official Imperial line, that they were an extinct religion that went out with the Empire. And so after the lesson, Zach, the brother, who he doesn't really trust Hool, and he starts talking about how they don't even know Hool's first name, so he's going to sneak around and try to figure out Hool's name. And Tosh isn't interested. It's not something a Jedi would do. So Zach goes off to Hool's office, and when he opens the door, he's greeted by a giant, fanged beast who goes right for his throat.
Are you spooked, Brooke?
No, but I will tell you something that I thought was interesting in that first chapter. I did like the foreshadowing in there. I don't know if you caught that.
Oh, what's that?
When they were doing their zoology lesson, they showed this monster with his teeth, and they said like the monster eats anything except these bugs that crawl around his teeth and eat out like the rotten flesh.
Wow!
Oh wow! That's actually pretty impressive. And I will say there's some fun stuff. Like I like the little turnabout that's like, oh, it's not actually a real dogfight. It's a game. I like the thing where she's kind of daydreaming about the Jedi, and it's just like she read that the official Imperial line, they were extinct, and it flowed right into what DV was talking about, an extinct species of alien or animal or something.
I like that she's like on the internet too. The HoloNet is, of course, like the internet of Star Wars. This book came out in '97. The internet was very young and new, and Force Flow. We could speculate on who is Force Flow.
Yeah, that is gonna be a big segment in all of these episodes, I feel like. So, but I want to talk about the HoloNet a little bit. Is this the first appearance of the HoloNet?
I think it is. I don't think there's been any mention of it prior.
So that's really interesting. It's certainly the first appearance that we've had on our show, but I mean, like, in general, is this the earliest?
Oh, let's. You should. Do you have access to a computer? You look it up.
I'll look it up.
All right. I'll go into chapter 2 while you look it up to see what was first. So, anyway, this snarling creature grabs Zach's throat, and he demands to know why he is there. And Zach, he is so scared, he starts stuttering, he can't get any words out, and this foul creature releases him, and it starts to morph, and it turns into none other than their Uncle Hool. And, of course, as Tim mentioned, Uncle Hool is a she-do. He can change into these creatures. And this creature was one creature that he had seen during his travels, because he is an anthropologist. And he says being able to transform into these creatures keeps him in practice. And Zach's like, practice for what? And he replies, for eating small, annoying boys. So meanwhile, we jump to Tosh, and she makes her way to the cockpit of their ship, the Light Runner. And there's nobody in the cockpit. It's all set to automatic. And she reflects on how badly she misses her parents. How when they died, she was light years away and still somehow felt the pain of losing them before she was even told about it. And she's never been one for with a lot of friends because she has this bad habit of finishing people's sentences. People can't stand this, so they don't want nothing to do with her. So, whenever she lost her parents, she felt like she should just curl up into a ball and become catatonic. However, her brother Zach, who was a fraidy cat before their parents died, he dealt with the pain by becoming a daredevil, doing dangerous things like skimboarding. And there will be plenty of skimboarding in this book, because this is 97. What's big in 97? The internet and skateboarding.
X Games, baby!
X Games. Funny thing, I was talking about the X Games recently with Mel, and she had no idea what I was talking about. I opened a whole new world for her in terms of the X Games.
That's such a brief generational thing. Like,
Yep.
if even just a few years separation, nobody's going to know the X Game.
I was hoping you'd bring up skimboarding, though, because I just kept taking pictures of that on my iPad every time it was mentioned until it finally became such a focal point.
We'll talk all about skimboarding. The HoloNet, just to go back to that quick, I looked it up. I can't figure out the exact first appearance, unfortunately, because they claim that the first appearance is in the Star Wars Holiday Special, but it's a retcon. I guess that the Wookiees are watching like
Jefferson
Starship on
porn on the holonet.
But regardless, there are earlier books though that mention it, including the early X-Wing books, which I think were published about in '96, and I see Jedi Search, which is part of the Jedi Academy trilogy, which I think is '94 or '95. So, not the first appearance. Anyway,
all right. Anyway, so I'm not done. I'm not done.
Okay. Yeah.
So he's doing things like skimboarding, and Tash feels like it's her job to watch over him because no one else will. And in the process of watching over her brother, she makes the realization she likes her brother. Her brother's cool. So that's a good thing. Good sibling relationship. So in the cockpit of the Light Runner, she's imagining that she is an ace Jedi pilot, and she's attacking an Imperial space station. Now, we jump back to Hool and Zack, and Zack is bothered how their so-called uncle doesn't tell them anything, and he asks them where are they going. And Uncle Hool, he's just grumpy as always, and he says we're going to Devorin. Is that how you would say that? Devorin?
I would say Devourin.
Devourin, which makes maybe some foreshadowing in Devourin. So he gives Zack a data pad and says, here, read about it. And Devourin is described as being a beautiful, lush planet inhabited by the friendly Enzine. However, what is weird about this is that it's next to one of the galaxy's most busy space highways, and yet no one knew the planet was there until recently. It just appeared one day. And Hool, when he gave him the data pad, said, like, just read this article. Don't look at anything else on the data pad. And Zack opens another file, and he sees the words Imperial Orders and Payments Received. And Hool's like, give me that! He rushes over and grabs it, but suddenly they're both knocked to the floor, and Hool exclaims, oh no, the ship is out of control!
So Zack and Hool, they head straight to the cockpit, and that's where Tash is, and she insists that she didn't touch anything, Brooke.
I know, she says it many times.
So Hool is dubious about this, and he's like, Tash has her head in the clouds about all those darn Jedi Knights. And so they've been pulled out of hyperspace. The ship has been pulled out of hyperspace, and it's arrived at the planet Devourin 15 minutes ahead of schedule, which seems strange. And they have to make a very quick landing, and they make a bumpy entrance into the atmosphere, and they wind up landing in the port, and Hool and Zack, they go ahead while Tash lags behind. She's kind of, embarrassed about what happened because she's blaming herself. And but once she is outside, the port is very quiet, very dark, and not a lot of activity. And her uncle and brother, she can't seem to see them, find them anywhere. And she's like, what's going on? And then this sense of dread fills her. It's like she hasn't felt this way since the morning of the day that her parents died. So, right at that moment, something cold and slimy drops on her neck.
Are you scared yet, Brooke?
Oh, yeah.
You gotta get spooked.
That is a classic Goosebumps tactic. Right there is what that is.
That's a tactic, yeah.
That is
a tactic.
Because what is the cold and slimy thing, Levi?
Well, the cold and slimy thing, she rips it off her neck, and when it hits the ground, she realizes it's a necklace of flowers. And she looks up, and Uncle Hool and Zack are wearing them too. And next to her is a chubby human-like man with blue skin, needle-like spines for hair, and he is holding these necklace flowers, and he calls them friendship necklaces. And so this man, he is an Enzine, and he introduces himself as Chewed. You could also call him Chode if you want to. We will go with Chewed for the reasons that it sounds like chewing, and that comes into play later on in the book. So Hool has already looked at the engines and has determined that he can't fix the ship. They need someone who can. So he asked Chewed if he knows anyone who fixes it. And Chewed explains that the Enzine have little use for technology. They never leave the planet, but they may be able to find an off-world pilot in the cantina who will help them. And Chewed, he leads them there. And they walk through a small town. It's made up of mud huts. And Zack points out that this town is so small, they don't even even have a skimboard run, Tim. What the hell? This town sucks.
Yeah, listen, if you don't got a skate park, you don't got a town. Straight up.
And they pass a sign that it says, "Welcome to Devourin. Our goal is to serve." And now that I'm reading all of this over, there's so many little silly bits that kind of reference the end of the book a little bit. So just the name, I never looked at the name Chewed and thought food. Anyway. So we learn a little history about Devourin, and Devourin was discovered when a cargo ship that was unaware of its existence got pulled into the planet's gravity and crashed, and only one person survived. And then an Imperial rescue came for them, making the planet's existence known to the galaxy, and the Enzines welcome these people with open arms. Their planet has perfect weather, is rich in natural resources, and they're willing to serve anyone who will come. So, anyway, they reach the cantina. The cantina is called the Don't Go In, INN, Don't Go In.
Classic. That's what they call. That's what a lot of bars are named that way.
That's great. It's good stuff. Nope. Silly.
There's one I think here in Erie. It's the No Way In, maybe.
Oh,
something
wow!
Like that. Yeah.
That's very spooky.
Spooky
Anyway,
stuff going on in that bar.
So as they're just about to walk in the door, an old man wearing rags is thrown out into the mud, and these thugs come out and tell him not to come back, especially if he's going to keep running his mouth about invisible monsters. So they hurl some insults at him, and they go back inside. Tosh feels bad about this guy and tries to talk to him, but he thinks she's just going to insult him too. And Chewd explains that this character is Bebo, and they should just ignore him. And Bebo, he starts muttering to himself. He says something about how if he brings his friend Lonnie here, Lonnie will tell him about the monsters, and maybe they'll listen. So he runs off. Then Hool explains that tomorrow he's got some work to do, some important anthropologic work to do, and he wonders if there's a place where the children and their droid can stay while he's gone. Chewd says they can stay at his house. Tash tries to argue with him because the last time they were placed in strangers' care, their parents died. She knows Hool won't listen to this, so she gives up. So they enter this dark and smoky cantina, and Chewd explains it's all you can eat. And not only is it all you can eat, it's free! It's free all you can eat! Whoa, this is insanity! So the growing boy Zach, he is very happy at this. However, before he can get too excited, they hear someone shout, "Hool!" And Tash is then pushed up against a wall and has a blaster pointed right between her eyes.
So, how do you think they're going to get out of this mess? Brooke, do you have an idea?
Brooke, you got any idea?
I know how they get out of this mess.
Oh yeah, you did read the book after all.
I know how they get out of this mess. So
here's what happens. There's a bunch of goons. They're holding our heroes hostage at the behest of Smada the Hutt. Smada the Hutt.
Our third Hutt we've talked about on this series. The two prior being Jemba the Hutt, and who was Jemba's lackey?
I can't remember, to be honest. Jemba goes hard though.
Jemba it is go hard.
Jemba's like a straight up genocidal maniac, right?
I would say Jemba goes as hard as Smada.
Way harder, I would say. Jemba straight up murders an entire population of a planet. Isn't that the thing that Jemba did?
Well, he tried to murder the whatchamacallits. I can't remember their names.
Go back and listen to the first couple episodes of this podcast, and you'll remember better than us what Jemba did.
Jemba and his lackey the Hutt.
Grelb
the Hutt.
Yes!
Yeah, he did.
Yes!
Grelb.
Yes! Okay.
So this is Smada's the third Hutt, and we'll have another Hutt in the Jedi Prince series.
Eventually, yeah.
Yeah.
So, here we go. Smada the Hutt. And Smotter the Hutt is hiding out from the Gain Wards on his home planet.
Hutt Town.
Hutt Town, that's the name. And so he wants Hool to assassinate someone for him, is what he says, on account of his shape-shifting abilities and all. And Tosh is shocked by this idea. It's like, my uncle's not going to murder someone for you. And he says, you don't know much about your uncle if you think he ain't no killer, little girl. He doesn't say it that way, but I said it that way. Hey. So the Hutt is stopped by the threat of 3 people. 2 men, 1 woman. All of them are armed. One of them has a lightsaber. The weapon of the Jedi. So, Tash is very impressed by this, and Smada leaves our protagonists alone for the time being. Tosh then gets a good look at him, and she's able to recognize one of these characters. One of these characters is named Princess Leia. And she tells Princess Leia, hey, I'm from Alderaan. Sorry, doesn't it suck what happened to our home planet? And Leia's like, yeah, man, it sucks. So, even though that heroic trio, who obviously are Leia, who else could it be? It could be Han Solo? Could it be Luke Skywalker? Yes, of course. And they told them, oh, we're here for research, quote unquote, because they don't want to tell them they're rebels, obviously. And they're apparently done, and they're ready to leave. But Leia agrees to hang out for a bit and make sure the Hutt and his goons, they don't return. So I'm going to read a little bit here from the end of this chapter. So Tash could barely pay attention. They all go sit, and they sit at a booth, and they talk. So Tash could barely pay attention. Maybe it was the exotic food, or maybe the feeling of being watched was growing stronger, but she thought she might be sick. The sensation was so strong that she had actually forgotten about the blonde man with the Jedi lightsaber until he leaned across the table to speak to her. Is everything all right? He asked. Yeah, fine, she said. The young man smiled. Your name's Tash, right? I'm Luke. Luke Skywalker. Something about him made her feel strange. Not strange like the crushes she'd had on boys back at Alderaan. She had outgrown crushes anyway. This was a sense of relief. Tash felt as if she'd been waiting to meet someone like Luke Skywalker all her life. His blue eyes stared at her like a scanner reaching into her deepest thoughts. Something's troubling you. I guess, Tash began. She never liked telling people about the feelings she sometimes got, but she found herself confiding in him easily. I guess I feel a little uneasy here. I don't know what exactly, but something's bothering me. It's probably just my imagination. She didn't expect him to understand, since no one ever understood. To her surprise, Luke said, Not too long ago, a good friend of mine taught me a very important lesson. Trust your feelings. From the next chair, Chewbacca barked a question at Hool, and Han translated. So you say you dropped out of hyperspace 15 minutes too early? Uncle Hool nodded. It caused a great deal of damage to our ship. The same thing happened to us. My ship, the Millennium Falcon, got shaken up pretty good. The star pilot shook his head. I don't know. Maybe it's just an error in the star charts. Perhaps, Uncle Hool agreed. But in our case, I think it was some problems we had on board. He glared at Tash. Zack laughed. He means Tash. She was playing Jedi Knight in the cockpit. Tash felt her face grow red. Luke Skywalker raised an eyebrow and gave her a knowing smile. So, you want to be a Jedi, do you? I've read about them, she confessed. My parents were on Alderaan when it... I always thought that if there were more Jedi, they wouldn't have let it happen. They do their best, Tash, Luke said. That's all any of us can do. Are you a Jedi? She asked almost in a whisper, pointing at his lightsaber. Luke shook his head. I wish I could say yes, but no, I'm not. This lightsaber belonged to my father. Tash nodded sadly. They say all the Jedi are gone now, so I don't know how I'd ever find one to teach me. Luke put his hand on her shoulder. He whispered, "Don't give up hope yet. You might be surprised. A Jedi might come looking for you someday." Tash wanted to know what he meant by that, but she didn't get a chance to ask, because at that moment, someone screamed!
I want to say here that this scene with our hero characters from the movies is written so much better than anything in the Jedi Prince novels.
Of course, they actually feel like the characters.
They do. The only thing that I thought was a little, like, Leia really has nothing to say about, like, oh, you guys are from Alderaan too?
I
like,
wanted a little more there, but I think we might get that more in the next book, because I think they show up again in the next book. So.
Alright. Anyway, Chapter 6. Brooke, are you scared? Are you spooked?
You know,
who could be screaming?
Nothing scarier than a smile from Luke. I'm on my toes with fear.
So they run outside, and it's Bebo. Bebo is ranting and raving. His friend Lonnie, she was just here, and she disappeared. She was here, now she's not. And the Cantina patrons, they come outside, they immediately dismiss him, and they throw some insults at him, and they chuckle away. Tash comes to Bebo's aid, and Chewd shows up, and he says, yeah, this dude's just loony. And it's explained that he was the pilot of the Misanthrope, which was the ship that crashed.
Weird name for a ship.
Very weird name for a ship. It's a ship that crashed and discovered the planet. He was the only survivor.
Is this ship captained by Stephen Patrick Morrissey, Misanthrope? Whatever. Stupid
okay.
Joke. Dumb joke.
I hope somewhere someday finds that funny. So anyway,
hey, listen. It's not I didn't pick an obscure figure. Get out of here.
It's okay. It's all right. It's fine.
It's fine.
It's fine. Anyway,
so 7:44 p.m. Very late.
Very late. Bebo,
extremely late.
So Bebo chimes in, and he says that the Imperial Inquiry lied. Everybody on the ship was alive when we landed, but they've all disappeared. And now Lonnie's gone, and she was my only friend. And so he's alone now. So this is when Chode, he's like, well, if she was gone, where are her footprints? And Bebo goes looking, and there's no footprints on the ground. So Uncle Hul decides they should move along, get their new friends to fix the light runner. And Tash, she's at a loss, not knowing how to help Bebo. Bebo, he just looks at her, and he says, it doesn't matter. Before long, you'll all be dead!
Oh, shit. That's pretty spooky.
That was spooky.
See,
when the town drunk tells you you're gonna die, you gotta work.
This is the thing, Brooke, actually, that's worth talking about. You know, the three of us, we, make movies and stuff. Mm-hmm. And you act, and you like playing crazy characters.
Oh, this is a character
This is a character you could play.
Oh, yeah.
We've been watching... We watch lots of movies together, you and I, and so we'll always be like, that's a guy that you could play.
Without a doubt.
So we'll always pick out some weirdo, some weirdo that's in one scene.
I will say this, if Disney is listening and they're thinking of doing a Galaxy of Fear television show and they're doing an adaptation, give me a call. I could play this part.
Bebo reminds me of Crazy Ralph from...
Gad,
they would cast Josh Gad. Bebo reminds me of Crazy Ralph from Friday the 13th. You know who I'm talking about? From Friday the 13th 1 and 2?
Yes, that guy. We actually, we watched Friday the 13th Part 2 like 6 months ago. And I believe we talked about Brooke playing that character.
Oh yeah, I can definitely play Ralph. Oh, yeah. For sure.
Ralph is the guy, if you guys remember, in town that
sells
the kids not to go to the camp.
Yeah, he's always riding his bike and wearing that goofy hat.
Yeah, this might be a revelation. I don't know if I've ever told either of you about this, but in high school, I wrote and directed a quasi-play well, it's a play, and it's a semi-musical. There's 3 music numbers, and it was called Camp of Inconceivable Terror, and there was a Crazy Ralph character in it. I actually ripped the character off entirely, but yeah, he walks in, and he's just like, you're all gonna die, you're all doomed!
Rip off the highly original film Friday the 13th.
I know, right?
Okay.
Loony me.
Yeah, anyway, so, like you mentioned, Han is going to fix the hyperdrive on the Light Runner, which again is their ship. I don't know if I mentioned that earlier. But Tash is still very disturbed by Bebo's story, and Luke suggests that she get on the HoloNet in the Falcon and dig around. And she searches on the HoloNet for the Misanthrope and Devourin, and she reads the official report that Chewd mentioned, and there's a second result in the search, but the page is in code. Imperial code! And Luke warns her to stay away from it, but she pushes ahead, and it sets off some sort of tracking signal, it seems disastrous, and she manages to shut the computer down, and the alarm stops, and Luke's like, hey, don't worry about it for now. And so Han finishes fixing the Light Runner, and all the classic heroes are about to head out. And I'm going to read just a couple lines here where Tash said very shyly to Luke Skywalker, I didn't realize you were going to go so soon. I wanted to ask you about your lightsaber. And her voice dropped to an embarrassed whisper. The Force. He smiled warmly. I'm not sure how much I could tell you, Tash, but we may meet again someday, and you and I can have a talk then. An electric tingle rose up Tash's hand as Luke shook it. The tingle lasted long after the Millennium Falcon had blasted into the sky. Very interesting scene.
Somebody wants to hold hands with Luke.
Yeah, well, that's very inappropriate. She's 13.
Well, what's Luke?
She's holding hands.
Luke is like 20 at this point.
Is that okay? Well,
he's 19 in New Hope, and this is 6 months later.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah, a little weird then.
I don't think Luke is flirting with her, to be fair.
It's a little weird for an adult to hold a girl's hand that's not her father, but
I think he shook her hand.
I'm saying Tash wants to hold his hands. I mean, this is she already said this is
a
beyond crush.
She's beyond crushes according to her, but let's be real. Okay, so anyway, moving on. There's much more to this chapter. So, Hool, Tash, and Zach, they head over to Chewd's house. I didn't get to talk much about Chewd. I was getting a drink while you were talking about it the first time. Chewd is a terrible name. Moving on.
Chewd the Chewd.
They head back over to Chewd's house. Remember, they're going to stay at Chewd's place while Hool is off doing his research. And so after a long dinner of Chewd regaling them about Devourin's many virtues, Hool leaves to do his research in the middle of the night. And Tash is more suspicious than ever. And she and Zach, they're in a room together, and they're falling asleep, and she tells them about the Empire-encoded page about the Misanthrope, and Zach kind of brushes it off. He's just like, not everything is some sort of crazy thing. And they both fall asleep, and in the middle of the night, Tash is woken up by some sort of sound.
Slurp, slurp, slurp.
Slurp, slurp. Slurp.
Slurp.
Slurp, slurp. So, as I have in my notes here, a slurping town to be specific. And after checking in to see that Zach is all right, she sneaks out into the hallway and snoops around the house. And she's caught by Chewd, who gives off a super creepy vibe and says the sound is probably just animals outside, but he smiles, and she thinks it's more of an evil smile than his jolly smile from earlier in the evening, if you know what I mean. So, he thinks it's probably animals outside, and he's heading out anyway, and he'll check for her, he says. And she's like, you're heading out at this hour? And he's like, very urgent business, very urgent business. And so just as Tash is calming down, though, and she's heading back to her room, she gets there, and she sees there's somebody hovering over Zach's bed.
Huh?
Very scary.
Huh?
See, this is probably... Would you agree this is the spookiest chapter? It reads the most like a horror scene?
I would say the spookiest moment is actually a little later in the book.
Well, we'll get to it.
But I'd say up to this point, this is probably the actual genuine spookiest, where something's actually like going on.
So yeah, that's something.
So, just then, as there's this person hovering over Zach, a huge hand covers her mouth, and she screams, and she bites down on the hand hard. The scream wakes Zach up, and he sees the shadowy figure above him, and he leaps out of bed. The two of them run out into the street, and Tosh, she looks back, and it's those pesky Ganks goons that are working with Smada the Hutt.
I didn't mention their alien race, that they're Ganks. Hey.
What?
I'm...
Oh. Mel is making a pun. She said, "Smada the Hutt, bigger the brain." Is that what you said? Okay, Smada the Hutt, bigger the brain.
Wait.
What are you saying?
I'm not following.
That's Mel. We're not following.
It's named Smada.
Yes.
Like Smarter the Hutt, bigger the brain.
Smarter the Hutt, bigger the brain.
Okay.
Okay. They got it now. It now.
I'm sorry, Mel.
It's okay.
I would have said smarter the Hutt, bigger the
fine.
Hutt.
It's fine.
It's fine. Everything's fine, guys. It is 7:53 p.m., guys. Very late.
Tim,
we're trying to get through this.
Tim could play the crazy, like, homeless drunk character right now.
Oh, whatever.
he's sleepy drunk here right now.
Let's move on.
So these guy dudes are chasing the children, and they reach the "Don't Go In," and they're pounding on the door. It's locked, and finally someone opens the door dressed in their pajamas, and they're like, "What's all the commotion about?" And Tosh says, "We're being chased," but when she looks back, there's no one there.
Oh, so we move ahead a little bit in time, and they're back at Chude's house, and Hool has already returned without any explanation, and the whole town has been woken up by Tash and Zach's screams. And the Ganks, remember, are nowhere to be found, so there's not even footprints anywhere. Even Zach admits that he never actually saw the Ganks. He just followed Tash's lead. So Hool tries to be nice to Tash and explain that she had a bad dream and was sleepwalking. Scratch that. Sleep. Running! Okay. Sorry. He says that her...
it's fine.
Everything's fine. Okay, so he says that her obsession with the Jedi is becoming unhealthy, and Tash understands that he's trying to help her, but she's kind of confused. She's like, I feel something with his Jedi stuff, but he seems kind of reasonable in this in the moment here. So she makes Hool promise not to disappear, just like in Bebo's crazy stories. So early the next morning, Zach begins to regret saying that he didn't see the goons the night before. He had some doubts about his memory, but he just seemed like he kind of got pressured into it. So, but at this point, though, it's early in the morning. He heads out into the empty streets with his skimboard, and he tries to break the record for a vertical ride. That record is 5 meters, baby. 5 meters in the air. And so he builds it up, he tries, and he fails. And but as he's falling down, he falls down, and Smada is right there, hovering over him, lording over him. And he says, "How convenient. We were just coming to kill you." And so I did want to just mention one pretty funny bit of skimboard nonsense here, that where he says, Zach slid his skimboard out of its carrying case, but before starting the board's micro engines, Zach put on his crash helmet, elbow pads, and knee pads. After all, as he told Devi a dozen times, he was a daredevil, but he wasn't stupid.
I laughed at that too.
Did you mention that Chewbacca, before he left, helped him soup up his board? Did that get mentioned? I don't remember.
I don't think I did, but that happened. So
That's
But
right.
that happened.
Yeah, he did. He pimped out the board.
Is this the chapter where he tries to break the record or whatever?
Yeah, he tries to break the record and he fails. I didn't go through every bit of how he failed.
He was trying to grind on the
wall.
Jump,
yeah, he has to shoot vertically up the wall.
More
the record's
than 5 meters.
Yeah, the record is I think 3. He was going for 5.
Record's 5.
He wanted to do 6.
He wanted to go exceed 5. So
okay, all right. Well, anyway. So, Smada and his Gak goons, they aim their blasters at Zack. Zack is pleading for his life. Why, Smada? Why? And Smada's like, it's because of your uncle. I'm going to kidnap your sister and then kill you to show him he cannot cross Smada. And just as Zack is about to be executed by firing squad, a voice rings out, "Doomed! You're all doomed!" And it's just Bebo or Bebo, and Smada says, "I'm tired of this character. Kill him first." And they open fire on him, but by some divine intervention, every single shot misses him as Bebo just stands there. Smada's pissed, and right before he's about to grab the blaster and kill Bebo himself, Uncle Hool and a band of armed villagers come to their rescue. And Smada, he knows when to fold him, but this game is far from over. Him and his goons run off. Zack apologizes to Tash because obviously Smada was out to kidnap them. That was the thing they tried to do. But that still doesn't explain how those goons disappeared while they were chasing them. So, at the mention of disappeared, Bebo, he pipes up and he claims that he has proof of his lunacy. And Tash, she needs to know more. She needs to see this proof. But Uncle Hool, hey, I ain't got time for this. I got work to do. So I'm gonna leave. I'm leaving you in the care of the droid. DV, and this seems like such a great idea, being that these children have been nearly kidnapped or / almost killed twice in the past 12 hours.
Yeah.
So, however, instead of staying together and being safe in numbers, Zack runs off to the Light Runner because he's got to make some adjustments to his skim board. And while he's working on the skim board, a shadowy figure approaches him. Dun dun dun! Cliffhanger, Chapter 10, Number 1. Now for Cliffhanger Number 2. Bebo leads Tash into the forest, and she leaves DV somewhere close behind. And Bebo, he leads her deeper into the forest, and they approach an enormous tree. And at the base of an enormous tree is a dark hole. And Bebo points to it, and then pushes Tash down the hole. She's fallen. Ah! What's down the hole, Brook? What's down there?
A secret lab.
See, I'll tell you what's down there. The hole swallows Tash up. Much like crushing student loan debt can swallow up your savings, leading you to file for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. And so,
I'm so glad that you had the odd chapters, because I would have completely forgotten about the Chapter 11 joke. It's been so long since we've had to do one.
It's been a while. So in the hole, BB, this is the hole that BB pushed Tash into. Is a laboratory, which is where BB lives. Bebo? BB?
Bebo.
I'm sorry.
Bebo. BB.
Bebo. It's Bebo. So,
Bobo. Bebo.
Bo. That's a
Bo.
very obscure manga from the 2000s.
Oh, I was actually making a Toy Story 4 reference. I just saw Toy Story 4 again, and there's a moment where Forky the legend, he's like, it's when they're looking for Bo, and he goes, Bobo. But anyway.
I told you to buy that Forky hat when you had a chance, Lev.
I know. I took my dad to see the Toy Story 4, and of no surprise, he loved Forky, so I'm going to get him a Forky shirt for Christmas. So
Forky's incredible. So, anyway, this is apparently where Bebo lives, and he just kind of pushed her in because he's crazy. There's not really any
Nope.
there's not any real danger that she's in from Bebo anyway. And so it's clearly some sort of abandoned Imperial laboratory. The Imperial insignia is in the door. And DV9 shows up and scares Bebo with a crate dragon call that he saved in his old circuit boards. You know, the way they do with them droids. You know, the circuit boards. You know about those?
Circuit technology from Circuit City.
Yeah. Circuit City, baby. You used to get some good deals on DVDs in Circuit City.
Yep.
Did you?
I sure did. I got a lot.
You know, I used to buy my Roller Coaster Tycoon games at Circuit City, I think.
I bought Roller Coaster Tycoon 3 at Media Play.
Oh, Media
Wow.
Play. Media Play was incredible. I don't know if our listeners remember Media Play, but it was great. Circuit City was more widespread, but Media Play, one of the great paragons to consumerism of my childhood.
For anyone that doesn't remember Circuit City, it was like Best Buy but red.
Yeah. But red,
That's
yeah. And you know, listen, Circuit City might provide some of the parts that could build DV9. And DV9 comes back, and he tries to take Tash away from Bebo, but Bebo explains kind of his story. He says, when my ship crashed here, I was not the only survivor. There were 20 survivors, and they all waited for a distress call to be answered, but the group was disappearing left and right until it was just Bebo and Lonnie, his friend, that just disappeared at the beginning of the book. And so at this point, the Empire had blamed him for the crash, and he would have to stay on Devourin, and the what are they called? The Endies or whatever?
the Enzines?
Enzines, yeah. They who are the natives. They said, you can stay here as long as you want. We're not going to turn you into the Empire. And so DV9, he insists, though, that they got to get back. He's like, this is interesting, but this is something I got to report to Hool, because he wants to know this. And she's and Tash is like, why would he want to know it? And he's like, I can't tell you that. And she's like, this pisses me off. I don't like this. I don't like it. I don't like it. So they leave. And I'm going to read a little bit here from the end of the chapter. And it says, back in the laboratory, this is after they leave, back in the laboratory, Bebo huddled near the edge of the terrible pit. He was afraid of it, but he knew that somehow it was the cause of all the evil he had seen. Now, at last, someone else believed him. There was a rumble from deep within the dark abyss. The rumble became a groan. Bebo leaned over the edge of the pit. For just a moment, he thought he saw something moving down there, but he did not see the Gank killer creep up behind him until it was too late. This is from Smatter the Hut, the Gank snarled, raising his blaster. It's your turn to disappear, see? He fired. The bolt struck Bebo and sent him tumbling into the pit. And so, that's
the end of Bebo.
Bebo's done. Bebo's ended. That's actually pretty hard as fuck. Like Bebo, you're thinking, oh, he's going to be a big part of the crew here the rest of the time. No, he's out. Bebo's done.
I will say this in comparison to Goosebumps. Most of the time, people don't actually die. There have been actual deaths in this. So.
Yeah, there's a lot of actual deaths in this book.
This book is like wild.
There's a big body count in this book.
So, and then there's one last bit of this chapter. That I'm just going to read here. Halfway back to the village, Tash asked Devi, "Do you think Uncle Hool will believe me now?" "I cannot say," the droid replied. "There is certainly a laboratory here, but what does that mean? It was abandoned long ago. If there is foul play about, I'd say it has far more to do with Smatter the Hut than with an abandoned laboratory. He is the real danger on this planet." But Tash had stopped listening. Another sound had reached her ears. Slurp, slurp.
They're back.
The same sound she had heard last night. "Do you hear that?" Slurp, slurp. "Yes. Yes," the droid replied. A most unusual sound, not unlike the blood-sucking leeches of Secroporus 4. It's coming from over there. With DV close behind, Tash crept toward the sound. Slurp, 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 slurp. Not only did the sound grow louder, but it multiplied many times. And it was coming from just beyond the next tree. Tash cautiously pulled a branch out of the way and peered into the small clearing. At first she was relieved. All she saw were a few dozen Enzines standing around the clearing. As Tash watched, she saw another Enzine step into the clearing. It was Chewed. Tash opened her mouth to call out to him. Then she gagged. Chewed opened his own grinning mouth and stuck out his tongue. It was surprisingly thick and incredibly long, and wriggled out of his mouth like a long, thick snake. It squirmed in the air for a moment, then plunged deep into the ground. Slurp, slurp, motherfucker!
I like how they described that tongue as though it were like a big penis.
Yes! Yes, they did!
I like that. I think this is probably the beginning of the spookiest part of the book, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd say this whole next chapter is probably the peak of the scariness of it.
Because the explanation for what they're doing is spooky. So my chapter 12 notes are somehow gone. I have no idea where those went to.
Oh, cool.
So I'm going to try my best to just wing my way through this.
Well, I could sum it up for you.
All right, let's hear it.
The Chode and his buddies, they're like, what? Well, she messes up. There's a branch that breaks. And then Chode's like, what the heck? And then he's going after him with all his buddies, and they're just chewing it up and licking and lopping, and they're attacking the droid, and everyone's running, and they're spooked. There's a bunch of fake explanation, and then you get an earthquake.
Basically, an earthquake comes, Tash comes back to the village.
Well,
Chapter 13. Everyone is...
There's actually a good moment here that I don't want to skip over.
Okay.
All right.
And so they beat the hell out of DV, and the Enzines grab onto Tash, and Tash here, she gives up. I'll say this: Tash gave up struggling. The Enzine were too strong for her. She started to tremble as the feeling of dread began to overwhelm her, and yet as it had in the laboratory, her fear sparked another feeling, a sense of peace and calm, powerful like some kind of force. The Force. Tash had searched for it, hoped for it, longed for it, but she had never actually thought she had it. But then she felt something. Did she? You've got nothing to lose, she told herself. Tash closed her eyes and she called on the Force. Taking a deep breath, she remembered that what the Jedi had written about the Force. The Force surrounds us, she had read. It binds us together. It can draw objects to us or push them away. It is the most powerful force in all the galaxy. The strengths of armies, of starfleets, even the strength of planets, is nothing compared to the power of the Force. Tash imagined the Force as a field of energy pushing the Enzine back. At first she felt foolish, but slowly her embarrassment gave way to calm. She had forgotten about her fear. A warm tingle spread throughout her body. She imagined an energy field expanding, driving the shrieking creatures further away from her. As she did, the tingle in her body grew into a strong electric current, running from the top of her head down to her toes. For just an instant, she had felt a sense of connection with something larger than herself, larger than the planet she stood on. That's when the ground began to move. So anyway, there's a large earthquake. All of the Enzines fall, and she's able to escape. She runs into town. There's nobody in the town.
So, yeah.
But this book has a stronger sense of what the Force is than Paul and Hollis David's do for sure. So
listen, that's a very low bar to clear, so I don't want it to sound like we're damning it with faint praise that it's better than the glove of Darth Vader. This book, We'll talk more. We'll wrap up. We'll have our big wrap up.
Hot take from Mel. Mel says it has a stronger sense of the Force than J.J. Abrams does. So, hot take. Hot take.
Yeah, I don't mind his sense of the Force so much as his sense of the characters, but that's moving on. So, anyway, everybody's disappeared from the village. Tash is alone in the village. She's devastated. She starts to think, was it my own calling on the Force that caused this earthquake? She felt miserable. And she heads back to the light runner and stumbles across Zach's skimboard. And she notices there's some slugs around it. Smada must have kidnapped him. Perhaps Smada was behind the disappearances all along. But what about the Enzines? Now, what about them? They've definitely revealed themselves to be weirdo creeps. But she's like, are they really behind all of this? Who knows? So she starts to look for Smada's stronghold, but she doesn't notice something creeping behind her. That's a cliffhanger that then she does find Smada's place pretty easily, but night has already fallen even though she had only been awake for a few hours, so something weird's going on. What's going on? Anyway, Zach is trapped in a cage at Smada's place, and Smada demands that Tash tell him where Hool is, because he still wants Hool to kill someone for him. And he said, that shapeshifter's gonna make me millions, you see? And so she says, what good are those millions if you're gonna be disappearing? You're under as much threat of disappearing as anyone on this planet. And the village, he's like, the village people don't concern me, little girl. And so he aims a blaster right at Zach's head and demands that Tash tell him where Hool is. But she doesn't know! What's she gonna do, Levi? What's she gonna do?
I don't know! I don't know! How's she gonna get out of this? Because she has absolutely no clue where Hool is. And Smada, he's about to pull the trigger and give Zach a first-class trip to see his parents again. However, there's a deafening cry. Smada and his goons grab their ears. It's so loud. But Zach and Tash recognize it. It's a crate dragon! DV! DV's alive! And he tosses them to skimboard. And,
yeah, come on, man.
Yeah. They hop on and they back to the...
disrespectful.
I'm sorry. I'm gonna curl up in my sleep couch tonight and cry. They hop on, they back to the future out of there, and just as they're about to escape, because the goons are firing at them, they can't seem to get a shot on, and it's because we didn't cover Tim. You didn't cover the necklace.
Oh, the pendant.
The necklace.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Damn it.
So Bebo, when they're in the lab, Bebo has this necklace, and he says that it protects him from disappearing. It's the reason why he hasn't disappeared, and he gives it to Tash. And Tash, when they're on the skimboard and the goons are firing at them, she says it's because of the necklace. They keep missing because of the necklace. But then Smada proves them wrong, because Smada, he's pissed. He grabs the blaster. He fires 2 shots. One goes right between DV's arms, because DV's hanging onto the bottom of the skimboard. Failed to mention that before. And the next shot skims the bottom of the skimboard. Skimboard goes down, but they fly out the front door into the pitch black night. They can't see anything. And Tash, she's reaching around. She grabs onto her brother. She finds Zach, and Zach says, when you grabbed me, there was something holding on to me. And when you grabbed me, it let go. It was big and it was strong. Don't let go of me. As long as you're holding on to me, I'm safe. Help me! What's gonna happen, Tim?
So, Tash...
What's gonna happen?
This is what's gonna happen. Tash catches Zach up with all the goings-on in the laboratory and the evil Enzine and the missing Hool and everything. All of it. And so, Smada and the Ganks, they catch up pretty easily, and they begin, but they kind of start getting picked off one by one, falling off the hovercraft and into the crevices created by the earthquake, and being digested, perhaps? So, But yeah, whatever the creature is doesn't seem to be interested in droids, so Tash and Zack hold on to DV for dear life. Smada is confused by this, and he stands up like on his tail. I'm a little confused, but like he said, he's very imposing. So like it said he stood up straight.
Yeah.
Could you imagine a Hutt just standing like just on the tip of its tail? Like,
well, he's kind of slug-like, so I mean, like he could just be like standing taller on less tail. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, no, it makes sense. It's just like I just was imagining him like as like a little teardrop.
Oh yeah, like on like the tippy, like on the tip of his tail, like standing on that. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
So anyway, he yells at the kids. He's like, "What's going on?" But instead of being answered by the children, he's answered by the Enzine, who show up. The weirdo freak Enzine. You know, the fucking the Matthias and his boys from the Omega Man style Enzine.
Yep. Chewed himself.
Anyway, I was going to make an Omega Man joke. That's for literally one person in the audience. So, okay. Anyway, I'm going to read here from the end of this chapter. The Enzine have shown up, and it says, "They melted out of the forest, 20 of them, all carrying lamps. They walked calmly across the ground, unafraid of whatever it was that had just swallowed up 5 ganks. Tash recognized the lead Enzine. Chewed!" Smada's voice was like a dagger. "What is going on here?" Chewed returned Smada's smoldering glare with a look of bored disdain. "Your doom." "Bah!" Smada curled back to his usual prone position. "This is some trick of yours. There's a beast, a creature that tunnels under the ground and hides. It attacks from below." Chewed smiled. "The beast does not hide." Next to Smada, the gank pounded his fist on the hoversled deck. "Then where is the beast? Where?" All the Enzine chuckled. Heh, 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 heh. As it had before, Chewed's smile became evil. "After all this time, you still do not understand. The secret of devouring has escaped you." He laughed a low, cruel laugh. "You think you will be eaten by a creature beneath the planet. You do not realize that you will be eaten by the planet itself."
Chewed roared with laughter. Tash shuddered. The planet? It was the planet? That was the source of her feeling of dread? That's why she felt like she was being watched? The planet, everything around her was watching. She looked down at the ground and wondered what waited beneath. Invisible teeth tearing flesh from bones? The strength seemed to melt out of her legs, and she clung to Zack for support. But Zack was just as scared. The ground, the simple solid ground they walked on every minute of the day, had suddenly become a monster, and the only thing protecting them was a tiny pendant hanging around Tash's neck. In the midst of all this terror, Smada the Hutt picked up a speck of dirt from his fingernail.
You're going to read this whole chapter?
I'm going to just read to the next page after this, and then I'm going to read the end of the chapter.
All right, that's fine.
He had already forgotten about his henchmen. They could be replaced. His devious mind had already bent around the terror of his situation, and he moved in search of ways to exploit it. He said he was a Hutt after all. "Chewed," he began carefully. "I'm sure we can come to some sort of an agreement. Perhaps if I were to offer you, say, 2 million credits to assure my safe passage?" I wouldn't offer you safe passage even if I could," the Enzine replied. "We don't control devouring. It feeds when it wants to, and it hungers." Smada didn't miss a beat. "It can have the children." "Thanks a lot, you ugly slug," Zack yelled. Quiet, boy! A bark crept back into Smada's voice. We are bargaining here. Chewd shook his head. There will be no bargaining. Devourin's hunger will be sated. Then why doesn't he eat you? Tash wondered. The Enzine burst into coarse laughter. A few of them stomped their feet on the ground. Chewd said, we live in harmony with the planet. We make sure that the planet is fed, and in return, the planet feeds us. Feeds you? Zack asked. How? In answer, Chewd opened his mouth wide again. A wiggling tongue came out and plunged into the surface of Devourin. Several others of the Enzine did the same. The slurp slurp of their feeding filled the air.
Slurp.
I'm gonna be sick, Zack moaned. So anyway, make a long story short, the Enzines are parasites that lure people to the planet, and the Devourin eats the people and keeps the Enzines safe, and in return feeds the Enzines. And that's what they do. They stick their tongues into the holes in the ground, and they lap it up. So anyway,
that's kind of the end of the horror part too.
Yeah.
So anyway,
I will say, do you think the Enzines are kind of creepy? Like, what kind of horror characters would you compare the Enzines to?
They kind of remind me of, like, I mean, if we're going to compare it to a similar thing, if you're compared to like Goosebumps thing, I would say they're kind of like the horrors in Horrorland in a sense, where like you think they're just like characters in the costume and they seem friendly, and then they're actually monsters that want to eat you.
Yeah. No,
what? Well, I always got the vibe that they kind of reminded me of the goblins from Troll 2.
Yeah, I can see that.
A little bit. But they're also, their plan here... let me actually get to the end of this. So they throw Smada, Zack, Tash, DV, they throw a net on them, and they tie them up, and they tie them to large poles. And they reveal here, Chewd says... don't you see? There is no escape from Devourin. There is nowhere to run. While most of the warriors stood guard over their captives, a few of the Enzines vanished into the woods. They carefully reappeared carrying 2 long poles, still tangled in their net. Okay, hang on. I didn't want to read that part. Anyway, Chewd, Tash pleaded. What are you going to do? Chewd hissed with an undisguised glee. I'm going to give you the answer to your question. I'm going to take you to the heart of Devourin, where you will meet a death that makes the other death seem like a gift. In the heart of Devourin, every last nutrient from your body can be digested, where it will be eaten where you will be eaten very slowly, eaten alive. So this here reminds me, the Heart of Devourin reminds me, of course, of the Heart of the Island from Lost. But
I thought you were going to talk about the Sarlacc pit, but yeah.
Oh, it reminds me of that too.
The way you delivered that sounded very...
Well, I mean, that's... I feel like that's what it's trying to get at. It reminds me of Lost. And then the Enzines also remind me a little bit of the people, I don't know their names, from the movie Midsommar. One of my number one movies of the year.
That movie's great.
Movie's great.
Don't act like I don't like it just because you
luring people there, increasing the gene pool. That's what they're doing. So
yeah. I mean, there's that. Yeah, it's similar. It's similar to a lot of.
It's a lot of cult stuff. Yeah. I mean, like it reminds me. It's Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Yeah.
I mean, not literally in terms of how they became that way, but the way they behave. There's a lot of great stuff like that. Anyway, so they're taken to the underground lab, and they're tied to a platform, and they're going to be lowered into the planet core and offered up to the planet Devourin. And Smada says he stays trying to bargain, constantly bargaining. He's just like offering 2 million credits. I mean, come on, You know, we keep threatening to make this into an Austin Powers podcast, but you could offer a little more, man. The value this is the same year as that movie, so it works. Anyway,
which one's scarier? That's the question.
Which one's scary? I mean, hey, Dr. Evil's pretty scary.
Exactly.
But anyway, one of the Chude's ignoring, obviously, Smada's attempts to bargain with him, but one of the Enzine kind of shows up and he whacks Chude over the head and takes the crystal, and then he transforms into a Wookiee. Remember Uncle Hool? He's back in Wookiee form. So he knocks a bunch of other Enzines into the planet, but then Chude catches him and knocks him down, turning him back into his regular old Shido form. And he takes and Chude takes back the crystal, but like a big old dummy, he stumbles and falls. So both Chude and the crystal are toast. But that platform is still lowering, and that lever ain't working.
Classic Hool the Fool.
Yeah, Hool wasn't the fool. It was Chude was the fool.
This is his fault.
Chude is a dude who doesn't know how not to be rude.
Chude knew what was up. He was just trying to be a good guy and feed his planet. You know?
Oh, yeah.
Hool messed everything up by bringing them rambunctious
Chude's side.
He's taking Chude's side.
Hey, Chude gave these people food, a home.
Oh, yeah.
And all he's asking is for you to give your life to his world.
So...
that's a lot of people's relationships with their parents. I guess,
So, how the hell will they ever get out of this situation? Oh, wait, this skimboard. Uncle Hool, throw the skimboard. He throws it perfectly. It lands right in Zach's hands. Zach has to, of course, make some quick repairs to it. Remember, it was the bottom of it got skimmed by a blaster.
Yeah.
And so he fixes it, and in no time, him and Tash are flying again. But what about Smada? So, in a moment of compassion, they turn to Smada and be like, what about you, Smada? And he goes, well, I was going to let you kids die anyway. Hop off and give me the board. Obviously, they're like, nice try. And Smada refuses, and he leaps and he grabs onto the bottom of the board, and the board can barely stay afloat. It's lowering deeper into the pit, and this pit seems like it's filling up with like a lava almost. And they're trying to get him off. Get off! And finally, a mud-like tentacle shoots out of the molten surface, and it grabs a hold of Smada. He screams in pain and lets go of the board. Goodbye, Smada. Smada is dead. Another character is dead. It's just, yes. Now the problem is they're still in the pit, and the damaged hoverboard can't fly any higher. How are they going to get out of this? And then they have an idea. Well, Zach has an idea. They're going to pull a vertical ride, and they're going to set a new record. Granted, the last time he tried to pull this record, it was only 5 meters.
A miserable failure.
A miserable failure. Couldn't get 5 meters, but this pit is 6 meters, Tim. 6! And he's got a sister on board. So I'm going to read here on page 126. Zach took a deep breath. He would only get one chance. If he failed, he and his sister would be pitched backwards, right into the heart of Devourim. Zach gritted his teeth. Hang on tight! He bent into a crouch and kicked the skimboard into high gear. It slid rapidly towards the wall. 10 meters, 7 meters, 5, 3, now! The anti-collision buffers kicked in, bouncing the board's nose up into the air. Zach jammed all its power to the bottom vents to the rear, all the power from the bottom vents to the rear drive, and leaned straight, reaching for the ceiling high above. He felt the board shudder beneath his feet. The engine whined. They weren't going to make it, he thought. It was a good try. It was the best ride of his life. But the pit was just too... Then he was rocketing out of the pit, straight as a blaster bolt up into the laboratory, while Tash was still on the board. Yeah!
Oh,
Tash.
God.
Zach screamed. Sorry if I hurt your ears.
What? That was no scream. That was just a what? I don't even.
Wait.
Think of the yeah from We Won't Get Fooled Again by the Who. Yeah!
No, that sounds like Roger Daltrey doing that today. That's what that sounds like.
Okay.
No, you're.
No shots at Roger Daltrey, but shots at Roger Daltrey.
I don't remember the politician. I don't remember the politician, but your scream made me think of that one guy.
Oh, Howard Dean.
Yeah, who ruined himself by going,
yeah! And then we're going to go to the White House. Yeah!
Hey, that was fucking bullshit that destroyed his campaign.
It really is. Because I was a huge Dean head. I was rooting hard for Dean.
I wanted him to get it. Whatever. We live in a stupid fucking universe.
Anyway, so they
Bush was reelected. What kind of fucking stupid world do we live in?
I know.
I don't want to talk about this.
It's
stupid Star Wars.
This is because of 9/11. Anyway,
this is Barbie's world. We just live in it.
Oh God, sorry. Move on.
So they get out, and it's no time for celebration because the pit is churning more and more. It's getting bigger. And Uncle Hool thinks maybe it's because it accidentally ingested that force field thing, that crystal thing. Anyway, they grab DV, they shoot out of the lab. Hool transforms into a small rat-like creature, and he climbs up to Tash's shoulder so they can all fit on the board. They head out of the lab, and they see that the forest, the village, the ground, everything is turned into this molten lava muck mud thing. But luckily, the spaceport is still standing. However, they're being chased by the mud tentacles. Will they make it, Brooke and Tim? Will they make it?
Yes.
So, anyway, the Light Runner is sinking into the planet goop, and they can't seem to get the ship to take off when, BAM! The Millennium Falcon shows up, and Chewbacca helps them into the fabled ship. So, there you go. Millennium Falcon's there. Han
Brooke,
says...
why do you seem so disappointed?
We'll talk about it in a minute.
Okay.
Keep going.
Han says that he tells them that you guys were lucky that they swung back through. And Leia says, luck? No! Luke! It was Luke's idea! It was not Luck's idea! Anyway, Han's suspicious of the living planet idea, but then they go on to full thrusters, and the Falcon still isn't out of the atmosphere. And he's like, oh, what's going to happen?
So this is when it's suggested that the planet is moving. The planet itself is alive, and it can move in space wherever it wants to. And this explains how they nearly crashed at the beginning of the book. This is how they arrived 20 minutes early, because the planet had moved. It wasn't at its original coordinates. So...
Indeed.
Han's brow, he's got sweat on it because he's like, Chewie, decrease the shields to the rear. Chewie's like, I did that already. Well, how about the shield to the blasters? Chewie's like, I did that already. He's running out of ideas. But then, just like anything, he comes up with an idea, lickety split. He grabs the wheel of the Falcon. He does a 180, and he starts shooting back towards the planet. And he's riding on the atmosphere of the planet, and he's picking up speed. And he slingshots out of the atmosphere, because he does, that curvature thing, and he's just like, oh, the slingshot trick, the oldest trick in the book, am I right? So they watch... In the manual.
The oldest trick in the manual.
The piloting manual that he got on Corellia.
That phrase is used twice in this. Instead of in the book, it says in the manual in like an idiom.
That is an interesting choice to choose manual. Anyway, they turn around and they watch, and Devourin starts to squirm and wiggle, and it implodes on itself, and it disappears. It vanishes. The planet eats itself. And that's when they're just like, all right, let's GTFO. And Han hits it, and they make the jump to light speed.
So,
there you go.
We got one last thing, the epilogue. And I'm just going to read the epilogue. Did you take notes in the epilogue?
No, I did not.
Okay, so cool. In the Falcon's common area, Tash sat across from Uncle Hool. I thought I had been left alone, Tash said. I thought everyone had been killed, like my parents. There was the slightest crack in Hool's unusually grim expression. Hool's usually grim expression. Anyway. I'm sorry, Tash. While you were gone, I saw my chance to spy on the Enzine, so I became one of them. But why did you wait so long to help us, she demanded. We could have been killed. The Shido explained. I need to know what was going on. I couldn't find out until Chud spoke to you. I helped you as soon as I could. What did you find out? Princess Leia asked. What was that thing? Hool said, I didn't find out much more than Tash did, but my best guess would be this. Devouring was some kind of scientific experiment that went wrong. The Empire's always experimented with mutations and biological weapons. They lost control of this one. The pendant was some kind of protective shield. The technology in that small device must have been amazing. I wish I'd been able to study it. Well, it couldn't have worked too well, Zack pointed out. The scientists are all gone. They must have been eaten. Were they? Hool wondered. It's just as likely that the creators simply abandoned their project and left it to fend for itself. They may still be out there somewhere. Tash remembered Chud's evil grin. And the Enzine? Parasites, just as you and DV guessed. They fed off to Devourin, and Devourin allowed them to survive as long as they attracted more food. How did they get there? Zack wondered. Maybe they crash-landed like Maybe they crash-landed like Bebo, Tash suggested. But the planet didn't like the taste of them. Perhaps, Hool mused. But I fear the worst. I think whoever is responsible for creating Devourin also created the Enzine to watch over and feed the planet. Someone is using science to create mutants. Luke Skywalker asked the question on everyone's mind. But whoever is behind these experiments, what are they trying to do? I can't be sure, Hool replied, but I intend to find them. Yet again, Tash remembered Smada's words, and she wondered why Hool wanted to find these mysterious scientists. To catch them? Or to join them? She decided to watch him closely. Aloud, she said gratefully, well, whoever it was, at least his experiment is over. Devourin is gone, and will never bother anyone again. And then one last bit here. Light years away, in the far reaches of the Outer Rim, in an area of space ignored by both the Empire and the Rebel Alliance, a commuter starship chugged through hyperspace, carrying miners from an asteroid field and back to their home planet. To the pilot's surprise, his passenger ship suddenly dropped out of hyperspace with a jolt. The pilot checked his instruments, and once he was sure his ship was undamaged, he realized that his vessel had fallen into orbit around a beautiful blue-green planet. That's odd, he muttered. I've never seen that one on the charts before.
There you
Dun,
go.
dun, dun.
So you get the kind of fun, like, something else like this is happening somewhere else ending, the kind of a third-tier X-Files episode style ending, where it's like cuts to a totally unrelated thing where it's like, something else like this might happen again. So, let's move into our final thoughts. We wrapped up here. Brooke, let's start with you. You're our guest.
Yeah.
You've expressed some disappointment in the non-spookiness of the novel.
Yeah.
What did you think of the book on the whole?
I thought it was fine. I think it seems like a entertaining enough Star Wars universe, story geared towards the younger folks. But I don't know. I was hoping to have a little less of a direct connection to things. Like, I thought like the scene in the bar with all the original trilogy heroes was fine, but I thought it was weird that they came back at the end. I was kind of just hoping that they'd just be able to resolve things by themselves.
Yeah, I can see that.
I don't know. I didn't like that too much. I also fun thought from me while I was reading this. I was hoping that what are they called, the Enzos or whatever?
Yeah.
Whatever they are. I was hoping like that instead of the world being the monster. I thought their big ass tongues would just go in the ground and they just find people. And
that's what I thought too.
Oh.
It was their tongues grabbing people. I thought that too at one point.
That might be a little too fucked up.
I was hoping that's what it was.
Well, yeah, that would be great. I would like that. Damn.
That's what I was hoping it was, and it's just like the whole planet's eating them, and I'm like, okay, yeah, sure, and it made sense.
What's interesting is there's a book, the third book in the series called Planet Plague, and I remember I read this book, Eaten Alive, when I was younger, and like when I went back and looked at the title, I was like, oh, that Planet Plague, that's the one about the planet eating people, and no, it's not. So yeah. We have a very advanced 10-point system, 10 midi-chlorian system.
Oh, boy.
How many midi-chlorians out of 10 would you give it? Or
now,
would you let it go off the charts, as in Anakin Skywalker, off the charts?
So that means it'd be better than a 10?
That'd be the best possible.
I'm not going to do that, just because I was disappointed, because I felt like this was pretty false advertising, calling it Galaxy of Fear. Not a lot of fear there,
I tried to add as much as I could in my reading.
I'm sure you did. Like I said, I feel like there's a good spooky setup there. You got this planet where it's just like, oh, everyone's too happy, and like there's the guy giving out warnings and stuff. But I feel like it drew too much into just kind of just being a Star Wars adventure where they focused a lot on like the hut and stuff like that. And that stuff's entertaining, I think, but it's not what I was looking for.
Right.
I kind of was just hoping, like, this is just going to be a spooky story. Happens to be in the Star Wars universe. Always going to reference things and things like that. But it was. I think it's just much more of a. This is a Star Wars book rather than this is Star Wars book answer to Goosebumps. So for me, I'm going to I think it's well written. I thought like the characterization of things was fine. It's very 90s with all the skimboarding, which is just goofy stuff. Spend so much time on that shit.
Yeah, I would say about honestly maybe 6% of this book is all skimboard.
Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Very funny. Is that ever been in any other Star Wars book? Has that been referenced anywhere?
I'll look it up.
Because I'm
give
curious.
Give your rating, and then Levi, you get into your thing. I'm going to look up skimboards.
All right.
So I don't know. I'm going to say, just thinking of it as a book, I thought it was fine, but I'm disappointed. Man, I don't. What am I going to rate it though? That's the question. Oh, geez.
Out of 10. And then to add an extra level of complexity, you can flavor it a character.
Okay.
Any character from Star Wars.
Okay. I'm going to give it... I don't know, man. For me, just because I was disappointed, I'm going to give it 5 out of 10 with a flair of Dark Plagueis.
Oh.
Okay. All right.
Plagueis, baby.
There you go.
Plagueis. Favorite.
So I don't think it was bad. If I feel like if it was a little more forward about what it is, and I had the right expectations, I probably would have given it higher. But since it is what it is, so that's my
perfectly reasonable. Before you get into your final thoughts, here's some information on skimboards. In the old timeline legends, it appeared almost exclusively in Galaxy of Fear books, but there is also an appearance in a Star Wars Tales issue, and Star Wars Tales was never canonical. It was always like, maybe this happened, maybe it didn't. Very good series from the early 2000s, actually. It was quarterly, lots of good stories. But there is a canon tab for Skimboard, and it is first mentioned in Choose Your Destiny, a Luke and Leia adventure.
Oh, wow.
And it's then mentioned again in Choose Your Destiny and Obi-Wan and Anakin adventure.
Wow.
These are books that we may cover at some point.
I want to cover those. I want to do a Choose Your Own
I definitely want to do one of them
point.
at least. So we might be getting more We're getting more Skimboard content in the future Galaxy of Fear books, and we're getting more Skimboard content potentially in other future books.
See, I think,
and strangely, I've heard that those books, that Luke and Leia one you were talking about, is good. I've heard a positive review of that book.
Okay.
Oh.
That's not that strange. It might be good.
I think.
Well,
that,
I always have a chip on my shoulder about Choose Your Own Adventure books. I always think they're kind of lame. I've never encountered one that I was blown away by.
I
anyway.
read them all the time now because I'm a substitute teacher, and I'll find like random ones, and like it's like a perfect thing to do while you're substitute teaching because like they're working on a worksheet, and you need something that can kind of occupy your time but isn't too distracting if the kids get too crazy.
Here's my pitch.
Perfect.
Here's my pitch for Tim. Tim needs to write a series of young adult Star Wars books that's just about skimboarding, and it's just about like a kid in the Star Wars universe. There's nothing to do. Like there's no.
It's like the pod race equivalent of the X Games.
Yeah,
he's dreaming of going.
He's
to the X Games.
It's just like the Rocky of
sports movie.
skimboarding.
Oh.
Like just a series of books.
I've actually long pitched that I really want a Rocky of pod racing movie.
Well, you could do it with you could definitely do it with skimboarding for sure.
That's better than pod racing, you think?
No, but the market, it's something Disney's not thinking of right now. They're going to go, oh, that's a part of the universe.
See,
we
Disney makes great underdog sports movies, too, so they should do something like that. I'm not even joking. And Disney Plus is a perfect fit.
You write the book, and then you can write the screenplay for the Disney Plus series.
What I've thought is a great Disney Plus idea, and it goes right along with this. They need to make a series about two young kids, and the first season, just film it at Galaxy's Edge, because then it's an advertisement for Galaxy's Edge. The set is there, just use it, and then
it needs to be open.
I got it. I got it. Well, you film it in the morning and at night, and I got it. Since the Falcon is there, Alden is still under contract. There can be an Alden cameo as Han in the series too. But it could.
You're begging for Solo too, baby.
I am. It could be Galaxy. I mean, you could just call the series Galaxy of Fear. It just make it about two kids and their adventures in space, and obviously one is obsessed with skimboarding.
It would have to be more spooky if you did that. Okay, so what are your final thoughts? Give me your score.
My final thoughts. I'm gonna. I like the characters in this book. I like Tash specifically because it appears that she's Force sensitive. She has this interest in the Jedi, and I think Zach's a fun character. I hope we learn more about Zach other than just skimboarding. And I like that this book has I don't want to say a firm understanding of the Force, but not a wrong understanding of the Force, which is important. Yeah. And I'm going to go out on... I don't want to say I'm going to go out on a limb here, but I'm going to say that this is the best non-Jude thing that we have read on this series.
What else? Yeah...
What about... Oh, wait. Was that a Jude book you guys read recently that you really liked? I don't remember.
Oh, Master Apprentice. Are you talking about
that? That doesn't count. Obviously, that book is great. That's one of the best books we've ever read.
Period for you.
Yeah, but this book is...
You've only ever read Star Wars books, so it's definitely one of the best books you've ever read.
I'm telling you, it's got to be as good as Catcher in the Rye.
I've read Catcher in the Rye.
Catch 22 level.
I have not read that.
Any book with Catch in the title is trounced by Master and Apprentice.
Red has read Star Wars books and the books he has been required to for high school.
You're right about that. Anyway, I read some non-Star Wars books last year.
You did.
That's true. That's true.
That's true. Granted, I haven't read a non-Star Wars book in over 6 months. So, But anyway, so I think this is one of the better books we've read in this series. I think this is a good start to this series. I'm going to go out and say I don't want to give it too high right away because I want to give it room to grow. I'm going to give it 7 midi-chlorians, and I'm going to flavor it. Who am I going to flavor this? I wish I had thought about this. I'm going to flavor this one Master Chef Han. I'm sticking with Master Chef Han. He's one of my favorites.
I do like him. So, this is what I'll say about this. I largely agree with you, Levi. I understand Brooke's complaint, and I don't even really disagree with it. I think these books probably should have either been titled something else or been less marketed, at least less marketed directly as this is horror Star Wars.
Yeah.
There's some creepy stuff, but it's it doesn't go beyond just kind of lightly creepy. I'll say this about the books. I think the characters are pretty strong, specifically Tash. She's a pretty cool protagonist. Shouts to Acker and Blacker for somebody that doesn't know about the... here's the thing. A character that doesn't know about the Force, really, or had limited knowledge of the Force, but is interested in it. This is how you write that, not I love everybody with the Force and everybody has the Force and whatever. That's a reference to the Join the Resistance books. If you haven't listened to those episodes, they're terrible. Maddest Bands is a terrible character. Tash, much better character who kind of accomplishes a similar role, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm, so, it does.
These books, I have some fondness for these books. I read a decent amount of them as a kid, and I remember always liking Tash a lot. Zach, I don't remember as much about. Hopefully he's a little more filled out. I think Hool is an interesting character. The mystery of Hool is fascinating, what's his background. I think this sets up a lot of cool stuff. The actual thing that happens in this book with the planet, eating planet, or whatever, is kind of fun, but Brooke just pitched a better idea for that would have been more fun. So, yes, some people really hate wet mouth sounds on the microphone. So,
well, they're gonna.
We're probably alienating some listeners with this episode. But anyway, this is I thought really good, and I agree with you. 7 midi-chlorians I think is a pretty solid score. Entertaining. One of the better, probably the best. Yeah, you're right. I think the best non-Jude thing is what else have we read? Jedi Prince.
Guardians of the Whills was probably
the only other non-embarrassing thing that we've read.
Right. So,
I liked Myths and Fables. That's not embarrassing either.
I know.
I didn't want to put it in the same thing as the other. Yeah.
Yeah, but I would probably put this right now in terms of anything we've read by Jude is top, then this, then Guardians of the Whills. That's where I'd put it.
I agree. It's
then I'd probably put it Jedi Prince, and then Join the Resistance.
Yeah. Join the Resistance is my... Jedi Prince is a lot funnier than Join the Resistance.
I know. It's a lot more enjoyable.
But anyway, yeah, these are good books. Flavor, hey, I'll go with, Hera Syndulla, just for fun. Cool character from Rebels. So, anyway, thank you guys for listening. Thank you, Brooke, for coming on the show.
Yes, thank you.
I appreciate it.
We've
been talking about this for a long time. I'm sorry that the spookiness quotient was not filled, and I agree with you on that.
Yeah, it's fine. And if you do want to hear me read some more books, I'm not doing my podcast anymore, but I am going to put up on a YouTube account maybe someday, and hopefully Tim will promote that. A read-through of the Choose Your Own Adventure novelization of the popular video game Wario Land 4.
So yeah, this is
not scary, but kind of scary. It's about as scary.
So yeah, when that goes up, we'll definitely talk about. We'll mention it on the show, and we'll post links on our social media, which you guys can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Padawan Library. Check out those cool hollow foil covers with me and Levi on them. And there's a lot of fun stuff there. Email us at padawanlibrary@gmail.com. We occasionally will answer questions and that kind of stuff. So if you guys send them, we'll answer them. And Then what else? Is there anything else?
I don't know. Next week we'll be reading City of the Dead, Galaxy Fear number 2, and that'll be followed by Planet Plague, and then that'll be followed by The Nightmare Machine, and that's going to wrap up our month of Galaxy of Fear, and then we are diving right back into Jude with Jedi Quest.
Indeed. There's lots of fun stuff
Book
coming
Zero,
up.
we'll call that.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. There's lots of fun stuff coming up. Thank you guys for listening. It's late. It's 8:55 p.m.
Oh my god!
I am exhausted, so we're gonna. And you know what? I think the library is actually about to be closed. The real library.
The library is closing, so until the books are due back,
it's closed, baby. It's closed.
Padawan Library is hosted and produced by Tim May and Levi Peretic. It is edited by Tim May. Our theme song is by the Astral Project. Our artwork is by Freddie Funbuns. Padawan Library is copyright 2019 by Tim May and Levi Peretic. All rights reserved.